with so many volunteers. Each one of them a masterpiece. Thank you, sir. So that will be the team that will be addressing us and to discuss the topic for today. I think that to properly handle that segment, I should hand over the microphone to before I do that, I think we should hear from the professor himself. His address. So, may I ask, as I invite to the podium, Professor Taiwo Afisi, who give us his keynote address. Welcome, sir.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to say good morning to everyone. It is indeed my pleasure to be here. Let me first of all acknowledge all distinguished Rotarians that are here, respected leaders of Rotary Club District 9112, esteemed members of the Ethics in Business and Professions Committee, captains of industry, dedicated professionals, students, secondary school students that are there, colleagues, friends, and everyone, including members of the LASSO team that came with me. I must first of all acknowledge that the Rotary Club is doing something that many clubs in Nigeria or the world do. The topic of ethics is something that should resonate well in everything that we do, in our private lives, in organizations, in our relationships with people. I must say that as a professor of philosophy myself, ethics is one of the core branches of philosophy. One of the three core branches of philosophy, particularly. We have metaphysics, we have epistemology, and we have ethics. And so, if the Rotary Club makes ethics as one of its core cardinal principles, then the club itself is something to just please let us give the Rotary Club a big round of applause. I stand before you with a deep sense of respect and gratitude, not merely to speak, but to share in a conviction shaped by both human experience and philosophical reflection, that an ethical culture within organizations is not an optional luxury, but an essential foundation for progress and sustainability. Your theme today, building trust and integrity, the foundation of ethical business and professional practice, is a moral compass in an era accustomed to compromise. It challenges us to ask questions that matter deeply. Questions such as, how should organizations treat people? How should leaders behave when rewards tempt them to abandon principles? How do organizational cultures shape daily choices? Today, I want to address these questions not in abstract theory alone, but with concrete examples of organizational environments where ethics have been compromised and the very real consequences that followed. Let me establish a theoretical framework for this keynote address. This keynote address is anchored in Aristotelian virtue ethics, the ethical tradition which teaches that lasting moral excellence is not produced merely by rules, policies, or compliance checklists, but by the formation of character. From this standpoint, an organization is not simply a structure of productivity, it is a moral environment, a space that quietly but powerfully shapes what people become over time, where integrity is honored, fairness is practiced, and accountability is enforced. Virtue is cultivated, but where compromise is rewarded and wrongdoing is excused, even good people are gradually trained into moral silence. Virtue ethics, therefore, directs our attention to the heart of organizational life, the habits, incentives, and examples that define how things are done properly. It insists that ethical culture is built when leaders recognize their responsibility as moral architects. Leaders whose decisions, priorities, and conduct communicate what is truly valued. In this framework, ethical leadership is not a public performance, it is a daily discipline demonstrated through consistency, transparency, and the courage to uphold standards even when it is inconvenient. Ultimately, virtue ethics affirms that progress and sustainability are impossible without moral coherence. Trust is not manufactured by slogans. It is earned through repeated acts of honesty, justice, and responsibility. And because culture is sustained by what is repeatedly practiced, the ethical organization is the one that intentionally forms virtues into people and embeds them into its system until integrity becomes not an occasional choice, but the organization's enduring way of life. Let me tell you a personal beginning why ethics matters to me, as I mentioned earlier. As a professor of philosophy, I've engaged ethics as an academic discipline. Yet, the true test of ethical thought happens in organizational life, in real decisions, in leadership dilemmas, in pressures that reward success over integrity. Ethics gets tested not only in classrooms, but in boardrooms, in workplaces, and in moments where values must translate into actions. I will never forget a matter that came up a couple of years back. I think it was in 2015, a few years after I had my PhD, when I came back from New Zealand. I discovered that some of our colleagues were collecting money from students to pass them. And given the background to where I was coming from, I took it upon myself to address the situation, reporting the matter to some higher authorities. Well, let me say not higher authorities, some senior colleagues. Not knowing that it was already a clique, because the junior colleagues were collecting money on behalf of the senior colleagues. At a meeting where I was supposed to present my evidence, the whole thing was turned on my head. And ever since then, while I vowed that I will continue to fight corruption in every way I could, I decided that I must be very strategic about it. And this almost actually cost me my job. And so, because of this, I will never forget a conversation that I had with a younger colleague who had a similar experience when he asked me, why does integrity cost me my job? That question reflects a reality that many people face when organizational culture normalizes unethical behavior. People lose trust in systems that reward compromise and punish conscience. But let me bring this closer to reality with specific cases from Nigerian workplaces to global corporations, where ethical culture broke down with far-reaching consequences. I want to provide some concrete examples of unethical behaviors and cultures. And this is important, especially for our younger ones that are coming up. That's why I'm particularly happy that secondary school students have been invited to witness this so that they can understand what the ethical culture is. Across Nigerian public and private organizations, reports consistently show entrenched unethical behaviors tied to corruption, weak accountability, and short-term gains. Studies of organizational culture note how leaders and employees engage in bribery, fraud, resource misappropriation, and contract manipulation to benefit personal interests at the expense of organizational and public trust. For example, surveys and interviews with organization leaders in Nigeria reveal how pressures to secure government contracts can push leaders toward unethical demands for bribes or compromise integrity out of competitive pressures. One leader recounted refusing to pay kickbacks and losing contract renewal as a result. Another documented issue involves falsification or mismanagement of resources at institutional agencies. At an agency that is to administer drugs and control in Nigeria, whistleblowers have alleged internal bribery and misappropriation of funds, and even disputes over accreditation of products that undermine confidence. Moreover, historical corporate misconduct has been linked to financial practices. Past cases involving Nigerian banks and businesses, where executives engaged in fraudulent accounting or unethical financial decisions, contributed to institutional collapse and loss of stakeholder trust. These patterns illustrate how cultural influences, inadequate accountability, and lack of consequences can entrench unethical practices that affect not only organizations but public trust at large. Let me widen the lens to the global stage. An example that I'll cite is in that is called Operation Car Wash. Lava This is the most expensive corruption investigations in modern history. Operation Lava Jato exposed how state oil company, Petrobras, and associated corruption firms systematically paid bribes to government officials and executives in exchange for inflated contracts and kickbacks. The scandal had political and economic repercussions across Brazil and neighboring countries, eroding trust in institutions and shaking markets for years. We can also talk about Olympus accounting for Japan in 2011. And this optical firm, Olympus Corporation, hit over 1.5 billion US dollars in losses through decades-long accounting manipulation. Despite repeated internal concerns, the culture prioritized secrecy and loyalty over transparency. The scandal erased up to 80% of the company's market value and led to criminal charges and major leadership reorganization. We also have the newest international fraud action scandal in the United Kingdom. In this high-profile media ethics failure, investigators found widespread illegal acquisition of private information in full hand, bribery of officials, and unethical surveillance conducted by jury officials and unethical surveillance conducted by journalists. By the way, quite important for the social, economic, and political well-being of this country. Resonates well with my institutes. But I just want to wish everyone, especially the panels that are coming in this session. Thank you so much.
Congratulations and thank you very much, Professor. Next, we all know that without ethics, trust erodes, and without trust, our institutions fail. And just because Rotary believes in balance, just as the professor has been recognized, we are now going to an institution that is at the forefront of upholding sanity across our roads. We know that Lagos is a very peculiar state. Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Next recipient is a law enforcement officer, traffic, Onabanjo Oluwadamilola Mercy, a traffic controller. Please step forward. Please put your hands together. Last official. Conduct, professionalism, and commitment to education across Lagos State. Beyond her official duties, Officer Onabanjo has exemplified ability as a devoted wife and mother of 2 children, successfully managing her career and her family life. Her services earned her several notable recognitions, including the Rotary District 9110 Maryland Vocational Service Award in 2022. The Rotary Club of Lagos Exceptional Service Award in 2024. Award of Excellence as the best performing female traffic officer. I think we need to show her love. She's the model of dedication, professionalism, and service to our service and the service of her colleagues and a wider audience. Very distinguished gentlemen, please help me make special to the achievement.
Before I present this award, let me ask, do you think they could last one in Lagos or not?
Yes, we do.
That answer yes, Lagos is working. And this is one of the Lagos state government staff that makes Lagos work the way we want it to work. Please let's do that another round of applause. You see, January is the vocational service month, yes. And there is dignity in labor. When you see some of the last man staff, not all of them are on the road, some of them are in their offices, which are in various